So welcome to the Paul Lovette Show. I am your host, Paul Lovette, and today we're taking a look at the history of the Islamic Republic of Iran and how the current regime came to power. And it began way back in 1978 when the revolution began to intensify with widespread protest against the then U.S.-backed Shah of Iran, his rule. And in January 16, 1979, the Shah left Iran into exile, effectively abdicating the throne of Iran. Next, in February 1st, 1979, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini returned to Iran from 14 years of exile. He was returned to immense popularity and cheering. February 11, 1979, the Shah's regime officially collapsed when the military declared neutrality in the conflict. This date has been marked as the culmination of the revolution and the effective end to the monarchy then in Iran. Then April 1st, 1979, following a nationwide referendum with overwhelming support, Khomeini declared Iran an Islamic Republic. November 4th, 1979. This is when Iranian students and supporters of the revolution, they seized the U.S. Embassy in Tehran and took 52 American diplomats and citizens hostage. The crisis lasted 444 days, ending on January 20th, 1981, minutes after Ronald Reagan was inaugurated as the U.S. presidency. The Iranian hostage crisis was the defining moment for Jimmy Carter, who was basically an impotent leader who failed to get our hostages home. Clearly, Iran saw him as a joke and did not budge. We had the failed rescue attempt that ended in disaster. It was a low point for American foreign policy in getting our people home. But the Iranians knew Ronald Reagan was not playing around. Destruction was coming. And as such, on his inauguration day, they put the hostages on the plane and they were headed home. In December 1979, a new theocratic constitution was approved, and it declared Khomeini was the supreme leader of the nation, solidifying Islamist control of the nation of Iran. Now, let's look at the nuclear history of Iran. In 1968, they signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty not to pursue nuclear weapons, only to pursue nuclear power generation. In the late 1980s to 1990s, Iran began acquiring components and knowledge for uranium enrichment from A.Q. Khan's network, who is a Pakistani nuclear scientist. Next, we're going to look at the period of time from 2000 to 2015, when Iran began facing international scrutiny, sanctions, and sabotage. So in 2002, the Iranian opposition group, the National Council of Resistance in Iran, publicly revealed the existence of a secret nuclear facility at Natanz for uranium enrichment, and Arak, which is ARAK, heavy water reactor. And you'll know the Natanz name that's been used a lot in our current conflict. Now, from 2003 to 2006, the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, intensified inspections and found evidence of undeclared nuclear activities. Iran agreed to suspend enrichment, but of course later began again. From 2006 to 2010, the UN Security Council began imposing sanctions on Iran for its refusal to halt uranium enrichment. The U.S. and the EU also implemented progressively tougher unilateral sanctions targeting Iran's oil exports, banking, and other sectors, severely impacting their economy, starving them economically. And then in 2010, we have the Stuxnet cyber attack, widely believed to be a joint venture between the United States and Israel. It targeted and significantly damaged centrifuges at Natanz, temporarily setting back Iran's enrichment capabilities. This marked a clear escalation of the covert war. And throughout this period, Israel repeatedly stated it would not allow Iran to acquire nuclear weapons and maintain the option for military action. Remember that. Our next time frame is during the from 2015 to 2018. In July 2015, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action signed the landmark agreement between Iran and the what was called the P5+1, being the U.S., UK, France, Germany, Russia, and China. It placed significant limitation on Iran's nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief. Key provisions also included reducing Iran's uranium enrichment. So you see how here we went from nuclear non-proliferation to you're not going to pursue this, and now we've incrementally increased to, now they can enrich uranium, which is the long path to the nuclear bomb. So this is diplomatic capitulation here. So back to the provisions of the JCPOA. Reducing Iran's uranium enrichment to 3.6%, which is far below what's needed for weapons grade. Reducing the stockpile of enriched uranium. Modifying the Iraq reactor to prevent plutonium production. Allowing enhanced IAEA inspections. 2016, many international sanctions were lifted following Iran's compliance with initial JCPOA terms. The Obama deal is basically what this JCPOA should have never been allowed. This is what Barack Hussein Obama, our then president, allowed. And when has dictators in nations like Iran or their government ever adhered to diplomatic agreements? So by lifting sanctions, you're basically giving them the money to covertly push ahead in their pursuit of the nuclear bomb. Fortunately, the President Trump would later get us out of that deal. So the U.S. withdrawal and escalation of enrichment of uranium. So that's 2000. That gets us to 2018 to present. So May of 2018, the U.S. withdraws from the JCPOA. President Donald Trump, yay, pulled the U.S. out of the deal, arguing it was insufficient and reimposed maximum pressure sanctions. So clearly, the president saw Iran pushing ahead toward the bomb. 2019 to present, in response to the U.S. withdrawal and reimposing sanctions, Iran began to progressively exceeding the limits set by the JCPOA. And this included increasing the purity of uranium enrichment to 20%. After that, you would jump to 60% purity, which is a significant step toward the 90% purity that's needed for weapons-grade uranium. It also began increasing its uranium stockpile, using more advanced centrifuges for production, and restricting the IAEA inspections. So, of course, You can't have an outsider coming in seeing what mischief you have been up to in your production. And then the ongoing covert actions, even after the JCPOA's partial collapse, alleged Israeli sabotage operations and assassinations of Iranian nuclear scientists continued. So present day, here in June 2025, the IAEA has recently declared Iran non-compliant with the non-proliferation treaty obligations. Israel asserts that Iran is within weeks, if not days, away from acquiring a nuclear weapon, or at least from acquiring enough highly enriched uranium to create one. This heightened concern directly led to the recent Israeli airstrikes on Iran's nuclear sites and military infrastructure, which Iran is retaliated against. Well, we can see the news and see that with the bombs hitting Tel Aviv. But this is the history of Iran's pursuit of nuclear weapons, and we can see how diplomatic routes had just basically allowed them to progressively and incrementally develop their nuclear capabilities. And now we were in the end stages of at 90% enriched uranium, which would allow them to get the bomb. Iran's government has committed to destroying the Jewish nation of Israel. And understand, Israel is only the size of, size of New Jersey. So 1-2 nuclear bombs and they're over with, they're gone, they're permanent part of history. So this could not be allowed to happen. So fortunately, I've been a little critical of the president because he's shown softness at allowing by not taking action against Iran. So Tucker Carlson, Steve Bannon types, and now even Marjorie Taylor Greene disparaging Israel, and it's doing the job that we should be leading. But the president has apparently saw the light, and I do commend him for belatedly getting on board. The route for negotiation is not a route he's interested in at this point, because as we can see, the history from 1968, what negotiations and all this goodwill diplomacy has gotten us is basically Iran on the doorstep of a nuclear bomb. So I hope this has been very beneficial to you to just, I like to educate for us to see the big picture or the history of our current conflict and how Iran has gotten to the point that it is. And so with that, this is the Paul Lovette Show.